Hi guys, today we're going to talk about solving quadratics using the quadratic formula. So this is what we learned so far. We learned to solve the quadratic formula by graphing, by factoring, and today we're going to learn how to solve quadratics using the quadratic formula. So what is the quadratic formula? The quadratic formula is a formula that we can use to solve quadratic equations to find the x values or the roots or the solutions, which is x equals negative b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a, where a, b, and c are real numbers in the quadratic standard form of the quadratic equation, ax squared plus bx plus c. Let's take a look at our first example. We have x squared plus 5x plus 6 equals 0. We solved this quadratic in the previous video using algebraically using factoring, and we solved it graphically using the calculator. Today we're going to solve this quadratic using the quadratic formula. I know the quadratic formula is x equals negative b plus or minus radical b squared minus 4ab over 2a. So the first step to be able to solve this quadratic is to find out the values of a, b, and c. I'm looking at this quadratic, the values of a, b, and c are 1, 5, and 6. So I'm going to use the quadratic formula, and this time I'm going to switch the values of a, b, and c with the numbers. I have negative 5 plus or minus radical 5 squared minus 4 times 1 times 6 divided by 2 times 1. Now, we when we had fractions like that with radicals previously, we said that the best way to find the final answer is to put whatever underneath the radical in the calculator and find the answer. So when we put 5 squared minus 4 times 1 times 6 in the calculator, we'll find out that the answer is 1, and 2 times 1 is just 1. Now, we know that 1 is a perfect square, and the square root of 1 is 1 divided by 2. This expression can be written in two ways. X is equal to negative 5 plus 1 over 2, and x equals negative 5 minus 1 over 2. Now, if we put the first value or the first fraction in the calculator, we're going to end up with the value of negative 2. And if we put the second x value in the calculator, we're going to get the value of negative 3. So the solution is negative 2 and negative 3, which is exactly what we got when we solved this quadratic using factoring and when we checked the solutions graphically. Let's take a look at the second example. We have x squared minus 4x minus 41 equals 0. Again, we're going to solve this quadratic using the quadratic formula. So the first thing I have to identify is the values of a, b, and c. In this example, a is 1, b is negative 4, and c is negative 41. So I'm going to use the equation x equals negative b plus or minus radical b squared minus 4ac over 2a. I'm going to switch the values of a, b, and c in the quadratic formula now. So I have negative 4 plus or minus radical negative 4 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 41. divided by 2 times 1. Now again, we're going to start by finding the answer for the numbers inside the radical. Negative 4 is 4, plus or minus. If we put the whole expression under the radical in the calculator, we're going to end up with radical 180 divided by 2 times 1, which is 2. Now, I have a radical that I need to simplify. 180 is not a perfect square, but 180 is equal to 2 factors, radical 36 times radical 5 divided by 2. So I'm trying to simplify the radical here. This means I have x equals 4 plus or minus. Radical 36 is 6. And then I have radical 5 divided by 2. Now, we have this fraction that I need to simplify. If I look at the top of the fraction, I can see that it's in the simplest form and I cannot simplify it anymore. And after that, all I need to do is to break the fraction into 2 parts. The first part is 4 divided by 2, plus or minus. The second part, which is 6 radical 5 divided by 2. This means that the answer is 4 divided by 2 is 2, plus or minus 6 divided by 3, because these are real numbers that I can divide. I have 3 radical 5. And I have, this means I have 2 answers. X equals 2 plus 3 radical 5, and x equals 2 minus 3 radical 5. I have 2 answers here for this quadratic equation. Correct. I'm gonna try and find the solutions graphically. So in the calculator, I need to find the value of 2 plus 3 radical 5 first. And 2 plus 3 radical 5 is 8.708. So any value that is 8.71 or close to that is going to be a good representation of this radical. I need to also check what 2 minus 3 radical 5 is. So I'm going to put that in the calculator as well. And the answer is negative 4.708. So any value that is equal to negative 4.71 or close to that is going to be a good representation of 2 minus 3 radical 5. So now, if I look at the graph, it's going to be, and I put the equation in y equals. So in here, I'm going to put x squared minus 4x minus 41. And looking at the graph, it's not easy to find the x-intercepts, which is right here and here. And if we look at the table, we have the same situation where it's not too easy to find the x-intercepts as well. So the best thing to do is to ask the calculator to calculate the zeros. So I'm going to go to second trace. I'm going to ask the calculator to find the first 0, and the first 0 that I'm going to ask the calculator to find is the one on the left. So I'm going to move my pointer to the left of what I think is the 0 is, and this is okay. So I'm going to hit enter. And then I'm going to ask the calculator to find, I'm going to ask the calculator for the second side of the 0, which is this. And I'm just going to enter so the calculator can calculate the value. And x equals negative 4.708204, which is close to what we had when we calculated 2 minus 3 radical 5. Now, I'm going to give the second value here on the right. So I'm going to ask the calculator again to calculate the 0, second trace. I'm going to go to 2. But this time I have to move closer to the other 0. And I have to be at the left side of that 0. So I'm going to have to move the pointer to the other side and get close, but not too close to the second 0. So in this case, I'm going to just stay away a little bit. And I'm going to hit enter. And then the calculator is going to ask me for the right side. So I'm going to move to the right side of what I think is the 0 and hit enter. The calculator is asking me to guess. I'm not guessing. I hit enter. And the value that I got is 8.7082, which is exactly what I got when I found the value of 2 plus 3 radical 5, which verifies my answer.